In this video, I'm going to take you inside Ableton and break down this hip-hop instrumental for you. I'm going to show you how I laid out this entire track and where every single component goes, ranging from the drums all the way to the most minor details like effects. That way you have a better idea of how to lay out a hip-hop track and can produce better hip-hop beats. Let's head down to the computer and get started. Alright, my headphones on here. We got our coffee, we got our computer. Let's dive right into it. So, what we've got here, I'm going to give you a breakdown of the most recent beat that I made. It's more of like an instrumental rather than a beat, but it's still a hip-hop beat. So, what we're going to do is give you a breakdown. That way you have a better idea of how to put your beats together and get a better idea of what needs to actually go into it to make a nice, fat, enjoyable instrumental or beat. So let's start in here in Ableton, and I want to show you my starting workflow. So one thing I never really did to begin with was templates. I never used plugin templates or device templates or a full-on project template. And I highly recommend using a project template. What I have here laid out is my universal project template. So I work predominantly in audio and MIDI, a mix of the two. I don't work with just one or just the other. For my drum samples, I find it easier to find sounds that I like with audio, and with MIDI, I use that for a lot of my pads and my synths and my basses, and little funky elements or whatever. Anything with a melody that I'm going to be playing, I'll usually use a synth. So that's going to be MIDI. So what I have laid out here is a bunch of groups for anything that I might need in my project. So here I have a lot of my audio sources for my drums. Like I said, I use a lot of samples for my drums other than the hi-hats. I use MIDI for hi-hats because it's easier to finger drum the patterns in. So I have multiple tracks here, and this is what my project template looks like. So I have all these audio sources pre-made, labeled, and everything, and each track has an audio device that I use for mixing and mastering, as well as an EQ. All the groups, they have an EQ and a compressor. And what happens is now you've immediately saved yourself a half hour, maybe even an hour, depending on how big your project ends up, just from dragging and dropping samples or tools and plugins and effects, EQs, compressors. It's all right here. So whenever you have to do something, say I need to adjust the EQ on the clap, I don't have to go over here and grab it and drag it in. I literally just open it, turn it on, and start making adjustments. That is a huge time saver. I can't believe I never did it, so that's why I'm recommending laying out a project template. If that's something you're interested in, I'm going to actually link a video to that. Check this video out right here, and it's all about how I set up my project, and it'll actually give you a free copy of a base project to work from. All of that routes down into this pre-master here. So it doesn't go to the master, it's the pre-master. So all of that routes into the pre-master, and I do all my mixing on the pre-master, and then I do my mastering on the actual master. In this project, I accidentally drug my mastering software on the pre-master, but it doesn't really make a difference. So that being said, let's get into the basis of how I lay out a track. I'm not actually going to be doing any of the laying out. I'm going to walk you through the main components, that way you can see it, and then in other videos I will make a actual template and a tutorial on how to lay out a beat. So let's start with the main sound here, which is going to be this horn sample that I have. So let's just go right here and I'll play that for you. So that's what we're going to be using for basically the main idea of the whole track. So what I did is I usually like to filter in the first 4 or 8 bars. So as you heard that, I'll start it from the beginning here, and it's filtered. So it's quieter, and then what it's going to do is it's going to slowly build up. And then we have some elements in there that are also going to rise up, and then it's going to make all this tension for when the beat slams in. So I'll play you the beginning here, and I'll open this up. That way you can see what everything looks like here. We'll close that because we don't need that. So here we have basically no drums for the first 4 bars. You just want that sample. That usually will leave people some time to do some ad-libs or kind of even prepare themselves for whatever they're recording. So you'll hear this. It'll start coming in with just the intro, just the horns. So what I did is, for some tension and some real energy, I added that low horn stab. So that immediately makes it more lively, and you're like, oh man. So you want the intro to catch you off guard. If they're scrolling through YouTube and they hear just that little horn loop, they're probably not going to get hooked on, so they're going to immediately hit next. You want to be able to hook them right with that intro. So that's why we put that horn stab in there. So now, instead of just this, which, yeah, it's a cool beat or it's a cool loop, but it doesn't really go, oh wow, that's wild. So then we added that stab in there, and that grabs you. So now we're going to build up. So what we did there is we used the clap and snares for some tension, some more buildup. So instead of just keep filtering, that would be boring. So the way music production works with instrumentals and beats is you want to have an alteration or a change every 4 or 8 bars, sometimes 16 depending on what the track is, but usually every 8 bars is a solid number for alteration. So we did our first 4 bars, and then what we did here, if you can see, we added a snare and clap build, as well as a crash. The crash is important just because it adds one more hit of tension, just like this stab did. So the blah, what we did is we added the crash, so it offsets that, and now you have a tension grabbing here and a tension grabbing here rather than just here. So you want to fill the spectrum out. You don't always want it to be all in low or all in high. Although some tracks, I have done that where 90% of my stuff is high or 90% of my stuff is low. It's all about balance in the track, so what you like, but it's nice to offset it as well. So with the first 4 bars, it was just those horns. And then it's filtering in, and then we hit the next 4 bars where you want to have some tension into the build-up for the next big bang, the actual beat. So now we're here, the first 4 bars, and now we have our snare. So what I did is I did a snare build, or actually a snare roll, not a snare build. I did a snare roll. And what that does is it just adds some extra oomph to it. And then another 2 bars in, I added a snare build. So what that's going to do is go, it's going to build up and add tension. So I'll play that for you now. And then I'll put it all into context again. And then we also have just a 4 on the floor clap. Excuse me. So what that does is it adds a bunch of elements to really fatten it up and add some space. And I'm sure if you're wearing headphones, you'll hear it. The reason everything sounds like it's on different spots is because this is a fully mixed and mastered project file. So typically when I'm just laying it out, it's all right smack in the middle and it doesn't sound like that. So it would sound a little different if I was doing a tutorial. But let's put this all into context for you now. So we'll get right to the edge of it, the first 4 bars, and then it'll cue that build. So now also we have a white noise build right here. And what that does is it also adds a little tension, just to let you know, hey, something big's coming here, like kind of like in the scary movies when noises get louder, louder, louder. It's adding tension, so you're anticipating something. So I'll play that for you. It's subtle. You almost can't hear it. And then as well as a MIDI sample that I put in. Oop, I got to solo that. So that also adds a little flavor to that white noise, because white noise, in my opinion, is pretty boring by itself. So with this, it adds some color and flavor to it. So now, instead of just one, you have this. And that already sounds a lot better. And we put a little bit of tail on that second one. That way it fades in and doesn't just hard cut into the beat. So let's put this all into context, and then we'll start doing the actual main layout of the track here. So you hear, you have the snares on each side kind of building, and then you have further out, you have the noise builds building up. So everything is building up tension to the spot where everything goes boom. And this is kind of like a hype gym type beat. So it goes boom, and you don't want it to be boring and then just slam into something. You want it all to build in together. That way it works out and flows together. So now what we have here is just our standard drum pattern, and then our 808s, and then basically the same thing. So it's this whole thing just with drums now. So what I'll do is I'll play just these drums for you. I'm gonna go here actually. So now you'll hear, you have your build up, and then you're going into just your straight drum pattern. So what that does is now we just have your bass pattern that's going to be kind of the basis of the whole song, but there is still variation. So if you listen to these hi-hats, we're still adding change. That way it doesn't stay stagnant. So let's hear these hi-hats. So that's a 4-bar loop. So now every bar, it changes just a little bit. That way it's not just a 1/8, tick, 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 or a 1/16 rather, tick, 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 tick. You don't want that, because it sounds nice, but it's not really catching the attention. So we have the little rolls on the inside, and different length rolls and different speed rolls. So what's happening is now you're adding variation to that, and it's adding some flavor. You're constantly adding flavor and building up. So now it's just not hitting. It's bouncing around and adding some flavor. And then basically the rest is just the kick and the snare. So now we'll put that into context with the whole thing. So we've got the horns and all the drums put together. And we'll do it from the build. That way you can hear how it comes together. So that sounds pretty good, how it comes in, it builds, and then it hits. It's not static and then slams into something up here. So it's not going from 0 to 100, it's going from 0 and ramping up to 100, which is what you want. You don't want it to slam. So you don't want to slam the door, you want it to slowly close it. That way it doesn't sound abrupt and it sounds natural. So what we did, that's our first 8 bars. So now we're going to add some change to the second 8 bars. That way it's kind of enjoyable, so it's not the same thing. So what I did, I like to add breaks. So I'll cut out some components. You don't always have to add for change. When you take away, sometimes that's just as effective when you delete stuff rather than adding stuff. If you add too much, sometimes it can get muddy. So let's go in here and I'll play back the last 2 bars of that beat, and then you can hear I took away 1 bar of pretty much everything. Excuse me. and added some stuff. So you can hear how what kind of an impact that has on the instrumental. So now what we've got, I also added, I like this noise here. I don't remember what I called it, but it's the vibra slap. So this right here, it's a silly noise, but it adds little bits, will add flavor to the song. Even if it's a one bar thing, it's something different. So that's this sound. And what that does is it just kind of fills out that gap. So we don't have all of the stuff booming, but there's still stuff going on. So I'll play that again for you. You almost don't even hear it, but it's there. And then what we did also is we added some pads. I'm a big proponent of pads in instrumentals because what it does is it helps fill everything out. So I like them at almost inaudible level. You almost can't even hear it unless you turn it on and off. When the track is just playing, you almost don't even know it's there. Too much is usually a bad thing. Less is usually more when you're making music for most portions. So what I did here is I added this pad, and I'll play this for you. So what that does is it fills out all the little gaps and pieces, and as say your snare, click, 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 it's filling the gaps in between, and it's adding some mass to the song. So I'll play it for you, and then what I'll do is I'll turn on and off that pad, and you'll actually be able to hear a pretty significant difference. Actually, I'll do it right here. You'll be able to hear a pretty significant difference with it on and off, which is nice. Actually, let's do it right here instead. So let's play this with it on. Oop. Play the whole beat with the loop on. So it's subtle, but you can hear the difference in how it really helps fill that out. A big pad, usually a nice filtered pad, will do wonders for packing out the whole track and adding just an ambient space to it, adding space and helping it fill out, which is really, really nice. So we've got the first half of the track laid out, and what I did here is I did a completely different noise sample at one point. So we've got basically the same thing that goes through. We've got a longer break here. And changing the octave of your sample is big. It adds variation and it's fun. So it helps keep you enjoying it. So instead of being high, we added it low. So now we do the same thing with the build and everything, and it comes up into the same beat but with the low. So then it's basically the same exact beat but with the lower horns. So what we did here is we're doing our beat, we got the last 4 bars, and we've got to build up into the next big breakdown. So I did a whole 8-bar breakdown. I typically don't do in songs like this, but it's more of like a cinematic or like a gym hype track, so you want a little bit of downtime in it. So what I did, I'll play these last 2 bars of this, and then you'll hear that build up, and then it's going to crash into a completely different portion of the track. So now what I did is I put a string lead in here. So I'll play this by itself. and that matches the actual horn rhythm, or the melody rather. So that matches that. It's the same, but it's just a whole different sound. So it's breaking up the monotony. The big thing is keeping it different and keeping your listener or your vocalist in tune with it, and saying you want them to hear from 0 seconds to 4 minutes. You want them to listen to the whole thing. So if you just play that horns the whole way through and it's the same 8-bar loop, I'm checked out after 2 minutes max. So you want to switch it up. So what I did here is I have that for 4 bars, and then what did we do? We changed it. So I'll play this 4 bars and you'll hear the next portion. So we go up, we add a second octave to it. So we have that, and then we go into our build with the drums, just like the intro. So the build is pretty much the same all the way through. On this build here, we added another element, which I'll show you here. Where is it? This is something I actually bounced. Is it this one? I think it's this one. Yeah. So that's actually a MIDI track that I played, and I bounced it, but that adds an extra little bit because we know we're changing the song to a whole different thing. So I added one extra thing to say, hey, something different's coming. So what I'll do here is I'll start over here. So now we're basically through the whole build, and then we are in this spot with just this new sound. So that's a quick one, and then we get back into the main idea of the track. So we're basically starting over with filtering in the horns, but then when the big drop comes in, we're adding these strings, so it really adds some more depth to it. So we're here. So what I'll do is I'll play this beat for you, and then we'll play the next one, so you can hear the difference. So there's that. Now we have this one with the strings and everything. It really adds an extra. So you can hear how much extra top end that adds, just a little more crispness to it, which helps. It adds some change to it, breaks up the monotony once again. So then that goes through the next 16 bars, and then we do an outro. So we gotta start here. I'll let you play it out. So we had one more big bang at the end. That's basically the whole idea. So you start off with your main idea, which is this loop down here, and then you slowly build around it. You build up tension, release. It builds up, comes back down, builds back up, comes back down. You don't want it to build up and you just go all the way across. It's too much. You don't want it to build up, then drop down, and then go all the way across. It's too little. You want to have it like a roller coaster, up and down. And what that does is it keeps the listener intrigued, keeps them listening. That's what you want. So hopefully that puts some better perspective with this track breakdown. That way you can get some better ideas for your beats, what you might be missing, or what you have too much of, or if you're just lacking on the layout. If you like that, don't forget, please like, subscribe. I'm actually going to be doing a full-blown tutorial on how to make a beat. So it'll actually show my process from starting, picking the sample, and then I'll actually lay the 8/16 bars out. And that hopefully will help you as well. So stay tuned for that. But otherwise, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.